investment promotion agencies, or IPAs, which include the Board of Investments, or the BOI, the Philippine Economic Zone Authority, or PEZA, and 12 other special economic zones. They are all authorized by law to grant tax incentives. Now, there are also 123 laws that grant investment incentives and 192 laws that grant non-investment incentives, or a total of 315 laws. Very diligent po ang ating Congress in acting fiscal incentive laws. No? Now, income tax holiday, or ITH, of 4 to 8 years, is the centerpiece of the investment system, investment incentive system. And this is followed by the 5% tax on gross income earned, or GIE, customs duty exempt, and also customs duty exemption. Right now, the 5% GIE is given indefinitely, mostly by PEZA, and is in lieu of income, VAT, and local taxes. In summary, we have had this incentive system for the last 50 years. Kung tao po siya, malapit na po siya maging senior citizen. And we believe that it is now time to look back, reflect, and weigh the evidence whether we should still continue with the system. Okay. Now, the next slide will show you, ito po, very colorful, but these are actually all the agencies that are authorized to provide tax incentives. Ano pa lang po yan, snapshot siya, no? Okay. Now, in the National Internal Revenue Code, we already have a number of exemptions, mostly on regional headquarters and international carriers. The main problem, however, is not the exemption or the special treatments, but instead, as the next slide will show you, is that we have 150 laws outside of this tax code that provide various investment incentives. So, you're not really meant to see this very clearly. It's just provide you with an overview of how many there are, no? So, ito po yan, incentive laws natin by sector. We're providing, for example, communication services. There are 42 laws which cover that. Energy and oil industry, there are 14 different laws, no? Games and amusement, we even have laws specific to games and amusement. There are 5 laws for that. For agrarian reform and agriculture food, there are 8 laws. No? For banks, there are 5 laws. For infrastructure, curiously, there's just 1. Similar ang health, there's also just 1. No? There are also, may isa pa tayong slide dyan. Meron tayo sa jewelry sector. There's labor, micro, small, and business enterprises, tourism, and sports. So we seem to be providing incentives to multitude of sectors in the economy. Now, let me compare the income tax holiday and the special rate in ASEAN countries. If you look at this slide, you can see that the Philippines seems to provide the most generous set of incentives among the ASEAN countries. And why is this so? It's because of that forever thing in the GIE. Pagdating po sa incentives, meron tayong forever, kahit ho wala sa pag-ibig. Ay, hindi ho yung pag-ibig na nagbibigay ng loyalty card sa kabila, no? But it's, you know, love sometimes cannot last forever. But this seems that the GIE will last forever. Right now, it lasts forever. It goes on and on and on. So for the last 50 years, we've had this incentive. Now, what are the other incentives that are provided under the Philippine laws? We have tax incentive allowances, tax investment allowances, higher deduction for research and development, training, labor, accelerated depreciation, net operating loss carryover, customs duty exemption, and export subsidies. Okay, now how about corporate income tax? Because the economy has been growing, revenues coming from corporate income tax has also been rising as the economy grows. Kumbaga, it's very buoyant when it comes to the economy. As the economy grows, as the economy grows bigger, gets bigger, and the collections from corporate income taxes also grow. They're very buoyant siya. However, if you compare efficiency, it's actually quite low. If you compare the revenue productivity of the different corporate tax regime across all countries, ASEAN countries, although we have the highest rate in the region at 30%, we are near the bottom in terms of revenue efficiency or how good we are at collecting taxes. The Philippines only collects 3.7, it collected only 3.7% of GDP in 2015, which translates to an efficiency of 12.3%. On the other hand, Thailand, which has a lower corporate income tax rate of 20%, collects almost triple of the Philippines at 30.5% efficiency. So clearly, here, we have the classic case of a very high tax rate, but a narrow base. So this leads to a tax system that is unfair and inefficient. Now, moving on, investment tax incentives. So what has been the cost of our providing of tax incentives? In 2015, Congress passed the Tax Investment Management and Transparency Act, or the TIMTA. So because of this law, we can now estimate the actual cost of the incentives that we give. Now, why is this important? Given the efficiency or the lack of it of our corporate income tax, it's high time that we understand how much has this been costing us and what are the benefits of giving away of tax incentives. So in 2015, data from TIMTA show that we gave away, or the government gave away, around 86.3 billion pesos worth of income tax incentives, either as an income tax holiday or through the special rate of 5%. In terms of customs duties, we gave away 18.1 billion pesos. The import VAT accounted for around 159.8 billion pesos, while local VAT accounted for around 37 billion pesos, although part of this will be refunded when exporters claim their input VAT. In total, the Philippines gave a total of 301 billion pesos worth of tax incentives. This does not include local business taxes and the leakage that could arise from a very complicated and complex system. Prior to TIMTA, from 2011 to 2014, we also have been trying to estimate ad hoc how much incentives have been given. So per our estimate, we have given up 68 billion pesos to 88 billion pesos worth of income taxes. Interestingly, for customs duties, it has dropped from 83 billion pesos in 2011 to only 38 billion in 2014, and this is primarily because of the implementation of free trade agreements that we have signed. So on the average, we gave away up to 1.5% of our GDP in income tax and customs duties exemptions alone. When the TIMTA was passed in 2015, it was reported that we gave away 53 billion pesos in ITH, 32 billion pesos in special rate, and 18 billion pesos in import duties. This is what the TIMTA law mandates. They have to report on this. No? So in general, we seem to be giving away 0.8% of GDP from income taxes and import duties. Together with the VAT, that's 3% of GDP. Um, the next slide will provide us with what the incentives are by the agencies which provide them. So we find that in terms of investment promotion agencies, PESA granted the bulk of tax incentives, 67 billion pesos. This is followed by BOI, which granted 29 billion pesos, and the remainder of 8.3 billion pesos is granted by the 12 other smaller IPAs. Now, which are the top beneficiaries of tax incentives by sector? In terms of sector, the electronics industry received 30.8 billion pesos, followed by the BPO sector at 14 billion pesos. In summary, the Team Talo has provided us with sufficient knowledge of who gets what. And this is going to be important in providing us with evidence when we, during hearings in Congress, which we foresee in the near future. Okay. Now, because of our tax incentive system, tax rates are very unequal. So it depends on if your company is within a zone or outside of the zone, or if you're following the regular regime. So this is a dual tax system, and it has created unfair conditions, whereas those companies or those firms pays regular rate of 30% on their net taxable incomes, while those receiving incentives only pays 1/3 of that, or around 6 to 13%. So it's very unfair because corporations which are under the regular regime also contribute as much to economic development as much as those who are under the special regime. Package 2 of our tax reform aims to correct this inequity for all. Now, in terms of the value-added tax, 159 billion pesos was given away as import VAT in 2015. Okay, so you can see that, no? So it's still, we can see which IPAs again gave away most of this. So we can see BOI and again PESA as those who are who give very generously in terms of fiscal incentives. Okay. Now, what are the benefits of fiscal incentives, investment tax incentives? So, currently, NEDA is doing the cost-benefit analysis as they have been tasked by law, focusing on the jobs that have been created out of these incentives, but initially would like to present what our take is on what these benefits are. So, our foreign direct investment, or FDI, has been increasing quite rapidly in recent years as the economy grows from an average of $1 to $2 billion per year to up to $8 billion in 2016. But if you look at what our neighbors have been getting, we can see a different picture. So, asan po yung Pilipinas? Ayun po tayo sa gitna, yung pong kulay red. No? So, while the Philippines has been improving in terms of receiving FDIs, we are not the top recipient in the region, despite having the most generous, being the most generous grantor of tax incentives. In dollar terms, $8 billion, we received that in 2016. But our neighbors, specifically Malaysia, India, Singapore, have been receiving double digits. They have been receiving much more than us. Now, if you look at ASEAN, yan, okay, ASEAN. Asan po ang Pilipinas dito? In contrast to the slide on corporate income tax rates where the Philippines had the highest bar, in this slide, the Philippines has the smallest bar. which means that in terms of percentage of GDP, the Philippines is receiving the lowest. So we're still at the bottom. Only 2% of GDP ang equivalent ng FDIs coming into the country, while Vietnam has 6.1%. So given our economy, which is relatively large, it's a $300 billion economy in 2016, we are attracting only 2% of GDP in terms of foreign direct investments. So we can ask ourselves whether our incentive system alongside our regulatory framework has been actually helpful. Okay. Another side, no? We have not been very competitive as far as exports is concerned. Exports po natin yung in total, trillion pesos. A share of GDP, it's also falling. No? That's the orange line. So while our nominal exports has been increasing, as a percentage of GDP, or in terms of how much exports have been contributing to the growth of the economy, that has been falling through the years. We also, in the susunod na slide, will show you that we have one of the lowest exports as a share of GDP among the ASEAN. ASEAN 5, no? So relative to the region, kanina, relative to our own performance, it has been falling, but relative to the region, our competitiveness, as measured by our export performance, has fallen, while other countries have risen. Saan nga ba yung Philippines? Ang Philippines, yun pong dotted line, yung broken line, no? Very symbolic. It's a red broken line and it's falling. Which other country has a falling line? Indonesia. But we should not be like Indonesia, we should be like Vietnam, which is the one, the orange line, which is pataas po siya, no? Isa pa hong pababa yung Malaysia, but it's starting from a very high percentage to GDP. So even if it's falling, it's still way above where the Philippines is. So despite the fact that we're granting more generous fiscal incentives than Thailand and Vietnam, they have been getting much more productivity for their economy from their exports. So our tax incentives should be able to help improve our competitiveness, no? But it's not the real solution here. So we have to address the underlying issues of lack of infrastructure, government inefficiency, high cost of doing business, weak human capital, and corruption in government. So while we may be very generous in terms of fiscal incentives, and even if we continue to do so, but we do not address more underlying structural issues, we will not be able to be as competitive as our neighbors. So we believe that tax incentives for the last 50 years has only provided us with a band-aid solution. So I think it's high time now that we should do this right. And we say that now is the time. Now, in terms of labor productivity, it's also, while real labor productivity, which is the blue line, has been increasing, real wages have been stagnant. And there are so many reasons why this is so. Education in terms of health, no? So this will all impact productivity and real wages. Now, it has often been argued that foreign investors look for the generosity of fiscal incentives as the main driver of their decision to invest in a country. We have done a survey, and this one was done by the World Economic Forum, and it shows you that the lack of incentives is not a leading problem for doing business in the Philippines. It's not. What is the number one problem that our investors see in terms of of dealing with the Philippines, it's inefficient government machinery. No? So, while government, ako, tinuturo ko na po yung sarili ko, part of government, we've tried to address the concerns of our investors by providing so many fiscal incentives, and for so long, government has not addressed the real issue. And the real issue is, are we efficient? Are we efficient in what we're doing? Is government effective in providing services, in providing infrastructure? Because that's also one concern of our foreign investors. You may be in the zone, you may be producing so much in economic zones, but if you can't bring it out, or if you can't bring it out in time, if your internet is taking so long, then what's the value, what's the real value of your fiscal incentives? Okay. Now, let me go on to the proposed reforms that is part of Package 2. Now, number one, we want to lower the corporate income tax rate. Beginning January 1, 2020, the proposal is to reduce the CIT rate by 1 percentage point for every, ano po ito? Kaliwaan po ito. For every 0.15% of GDP, or 26 billion pesos in 2018, for every 0.15% of GDP reduction of investment tax incentives 2 years prior. Okay? So the goal is to reduce the CIT rate from 30%, where it is right now, to 25% by 2022, while expanding the tax base by 0.75% of GDP, or some 130 billion pesos in 2018 prices. Alongside this, we will also simplify the corporate income tax system to improve compliance. Now, what are the simplification objectives that we want to happen? We will review the tax code and see how we can improve compliance. So this tax code has its beginnings as almost a mirror image of the US tax code, which is very, very complex. No? So overall, we want to introduce simpler rules for the imposition of the corporate income tax. So these are among those that we would like to see there. So like improving the general anti-avoidance rules, the allocation of income and deduction, or the transfer pricing, reducing the OSD from 40% to 20% of gross income for both individuals and corporations, enforcing the minimum corporate income tax rate, improve administration of allowable deduction, expanding the definition of large taxpayer, defining what a medium taxpayer is, and then perhaps more important, simplify forms and processes, and allow the BIR to prosecute tax cases. Now, going to the general principles of the incentives reform, there are 4 principles which we want to guide this. It has to be performance-based, has to be targeted, has to be time-bound, and has to be transparent. So we need to be convinced that by granting incentives to a corporation, it will be able to create jobs, promote countryside development, exports, and other positive externalities in the economy. Kumbaga, magpirmahan tayo ng kontrata, naka-outline na doon, how many jobs is this company going to create given these incentives? Tapos meron tayong accounting by the end of a certain period. How many jobs have you actually created? Okay? Now, targeted. We need to target the sectors that would generate the most significant of positive externalities. Time-bound, tax incentives should not be forever. Ganun lang po kasimple. And we always should have sunset provisions. Hindi naman po ito yung ating pagpapakasal, no, na forever in sickness and in health. Hindi ho tayo ganun dito. Pagdating ho sa fiscal incentives, kailangan time-bound. Kailangan hong may katapusan. And lastly, transparent. We want all these incentives reported to government so that the people will understand what it costs the country and if there are benefits that are arising from it. Okay. Now, on the governance of incentives, We propose that the function of the current Fiscal Incentives Review Board, or the FIRB, be expanded to serve as the overall administrator of incentives and policy and to oversee all IPAs. Now, we're also proposing that FIRB be given the power to approve the incentives by various IPAs in order to ensure fairness. Now, the DOF, Department of Finance, as chair of the FIRB, will have the veto power as the custodian of fiscal prudence and responsibility. Now, we also want to have DOF to become co-chair of all the IPAs so that there is a balance in the promotion of investment and fiscal responsibility. And NEDA, being our premier economic agency, will be a member of all the 14 IPAs. Next, we also want to broaden the tax base, which means, again, proposing the repeal of 123 special laws on investment tax incentives and to consolidate them into a single omnibus investment law. So, this includes tax exemptions of ROHQs, GOCCs, proprietary educational institutions, and hospitals. So, we want this to be straightforward and not confusing. By doing this, we intend to make the tax system fairer. Next, we also propose that there should be only one single menu of incentives available to all IPAs, and that there should be no double registration of activities. And only new investment activities will be granted incentives. Expansions, as right now it's allowed under the law, nag-expand yung isang company and then they will apply for incentives, and more often than not, that's also approved. We believe that expansions are a sign of profitability and should therefore no longer be given incentive. If you're only expanding because you're profitable because of the incentive, then that's not really profitability. The intention is you are initially provided the incentive so that you become profitable and then later on able to stand on your own without the incentive. Okay. Expansions, however, hindi naman ho kami ganun ka-hard-hearted, can avail exemption from customs duty for capital equipment. On export, we propose to increase the 70% definition to 90%, as the current provision causes leakages and concerns for BIR. So if you want to be categorized as an exporter, then be a real exporter. So dapat 90% ng inyong production really goes out to be sold to a foreign jurisdiction. Next, we also propose that the 5%, inuulan na ho ako, that's a sign. I think it's a positive sign. Oh, di ba? The rains. Oh. Anyway, we propose that the 5% GIE in lieu of all taxes be replaced by a 15% tax on net taxable income. The heavens are agreeing with me. So, this will not be very far from the 25% net income tax that we are proposing so that we can improve the fairness of the tax system. The income tax holiday, as well as other income-based incentives, will remain. Next, we propose that the VAT, instead of now it's being used as an incentive, should be purely a consumption tax, which it really is, no? So when you buy, you pay. And when you export, you claim a refund. It should not be used as an investment incentive at all, especially by vertical PEZA zones, which can include buildings, hotels, and hospitals. Finally, and this should be important to local government units, we will not commit, the government, the national government will not commit local taxes because of the autonomy of our local governments, no? The current practice of in lieu of all taxes, including local taxes, is not good. It impairs the fiscal autonomy of our local government units. Okay? Now, moving forward, only investments that satisfy the 4 key principles will be granted incentives. Yung nga po sinabi ko kanina, performance-based, time-bound, targeted, and transparent. And all recipients would have to report to the FIRB. Now, what will happen to existing income tax holidays? They will be allowed to continue, but no more extension. Existing GIE incentives will be allowed 2 to 5 more years as a transition period. And those that have been receiving incentives for 10 years or more will be given 2 more years, while those below 5 years will be allowed 5 more years, and then after that, they apply the regular rate. So again, our goal, our objective is a fairer tax system. Okay, now, number of years, number of firms registered with tax incentives. No? So as you can see here, there are 510 firms which have enjoyed incentives for 15 to 20 years. 131 companies have been enjoying it for 21 to 25 years. And there are 13 firms which have been enjoying it for 23 to 29 years. In terms of an adult, itong 23 to 29 years, dapat nakagraduate ka na sa college, you're already independent, may trabaho ka na, hindi ka na nakadepende sa parents mo. And, ewan ko lang kung may asawa, because I think kids now are marrying later, no? But at least you're already supposed to be considered as an adult. I think this adult principle should also apply to firms, to companies. Okay? So, pag naman sumobra na sa 20 years ang incentives mo, siguro naman sapat-sapat na yon, no? It's time for you to pay back to government. All right, now, sorry. We also propose that a 3-year strategic investment priorities plan, and still the BOI will be in charge of this. They'll be formulating this and approved by the President. The BOI shall also ensure that the more targeted list includes activities with significant positive externalities. Only the President may allow the granting of incentives to economic activities that are not in the IPP. Then, we will also integrate the tax expenditure process. Ito po yung pagbibigay natin ng fiscal incentives with the budget process. So that when Congress approves appropriations for the following fiscal year, the budget document will also show how much the government is giving out in terms of tax expenditures or fiscal incentives. Tax expenditure is also another way of referring to fiscal incentives. Now, there's a complementary reform that we also need to do, and it has to do with amendments to the TIMTA law. So we want to include the reporting of all tax incentives, whether it's investment or non-investment, especially those that are provided to cooperatives, because marami po yan eh. We will also mandate as well more benefits data at the firm level, because the current TIMTA focuses more on the cost side only. Now, moving forward, we want to have FIRB conduct the cost-benefit analysis. Another complementary reform, we also want to strengthen the investment assistance and facilitation mandate of BOI and IPAs. So, we want to see them approve more timely action on applications of projects covered by the SIPP. And we may have to package this as a parallel amendment to EO 226, so that's the BOI law. So yun lang po, marami pong salamat. Thank you for staying awake for me. Maraming salamat.
Thank you, ASEC Habitan. We now have ample time for an open forum, so let me call on our moderator. She is the outreach specialist of the USAID Facilitating Public Investment Project. A round of applause, please, for Ms. Relly Fajardo.
Maayong hapon. You're still with us? Yes, okay. Isa pa pong mas malakas na sigaw. You're still with us? You're still awake? Thank you. Naku, ang sarap matulog. It's raining. Ang sarap-sarap pa naman ng tuna dito sa Jensen. Okay, so before we start, Asekte, may we also request the presence of other speakers who can join us here, to join us here in the stage. May we call on, again, Director Arnalyn Abdon of DOF. My colleague, who is our tax expert from USAID and who also worked in DBM and in the BIR at some point, no? Si Joselito Armovit, Gem Armovit. And of course, our able moderator, one of our idols, si Attorney Benedicta Baladad. So very interesting po yung topic, but I know I've been receiving feedback earlier that sana daw po mas katulad ng sinabi ni Gov kanina na mas madaling intindihin yung presentation, no? I know because it's too technical for us. And yung incentives, this has been an ongoing thing. As far as I can remember, for 20 years na yata, there are a lot of advocates who are proposing to rationalize the fiscal incentives, pero hindi po ito pumapasa sa Congress. For some reason, it has been so controversial, and that's why, as a compromise, team tayong pumasa, no? Only for transparency. And we always see the incentives as a marketing tool, no, to invite investors and business, no, not just in Metro Manila but also in the local government units. And true enough, no, it has become a good tool, no, marketing tool, but we don't always see it as also as tax expenditure, as Asekte earlier mentioned, no. It's also supposedly a potential income for the government, no, which can be used for infrastructure program. So, siguro we will open the floor now for everyone to ask your questions to our tax experts who are with us in the stage. Please take advantage of this opportunity, especially if we still have other LGUs who are with us other than Governor. Thank you, Gov, for staying with us the whole day yesterday and today. No? Very rare po yan, and I really admire him for staying kasi ibig sabihin he's very much interested. Is there any questions? Yes, sir, please. Kindly give your name and your organization po. May microphone natin. Sorry, we don't have a wireless. Wala pa tayong wireless microphone.
Thank you very much for the presentation. And this is a question that I am throwing with regards to one of the topics mentioned regarding incentives. You know, I am a BOI registered company on project basis. Ibig sabihin niyan, hindi forever yan sa housing. Kasi 3 years to 4 years lang dito sa aming region, Region 12. Now, the way I see it, let's not blame, in fact, this was admitted also by the speaker, let us not blame the incentives first. Let's look at the bigger picture, ma'am. I am from the Jensen Chamber of Commerce, and for one, apektado po yung mga membro namin dito. For one, our tax base for purposes of collecting taxes is very low. Tayo po ang kulilat sa Asia. Okay? That's how you have presented it. So it's more really on those widening the tax base. Kasi marami pong hindi nagbabayad ng taxes. It's not because perhaps of incentives, but it's more really na maraming tax avoidance. Nandyan po yung smuggling, hanggang ngayon, nandyan pa rin. Hindi ata napipigil yon. Marami po mga basis to. But this has not looked at the incentives. Kasi wag nating i-blame yon. And I would agree that we have to rationalize this. Dapat walang forever. So ang tatamaan po nito, ganito po. Investors would not be given some sort of initiative to invest more in our country. Kung titingnan po natin, ang FDIs natin dito, kulilat po tayo eh. Okay? The same way that in terms of tax base. So, let us first look into these reasons why our tax base is such. It might be about the collection efficiency. It might be in the implementation of this. And for one, nakikita naman natin, maski may incentive ka, mahirap po yung compliance. Ang dami pong requirements to comply. That's why perhaps investors would rather go to Vietnam, to Singapore, and other ASEAN countries, dahil po doon sa permitting process lang alone, talaga pong mabigat. And I commend the government, together with USAID, for having this program of easing business. So kaya nga po, bago natin i-blame po itong mga incentives given, although I would agree na dapat i-rationalize, tingnan mo natin itong problema na ito. Implementation ng collection po. Yun lang po. Any comment from Ma'am?
Thank you, sir. Ma'am? Asikte, I'd like to respond.
Sir, salamat po. No, very insightful po yung inyong comments. And if you look back at what I said, how I presented it, I was not blaming incentives for where we are right now. No, there's nothing to blame there. Incentives are objective products. Ang sinasabi ko po, it's the way that we have implemented incentives. Like it's the only thing that investors look for. But sinabi niyo po very important yung sinabi niyo. Meron nga tayong generous incentives, pero kung pagkahirap-hirap namang makuha. No? So we're also addressing our ease of doing business. And in fact, kung alam niyo po, meron kang ipoproduce na, kunyari, mag-import ka ng tsokolate. Ano ba masarap na tsokolate? Kunyari, if you need it for your product, napakarami pong dadaanang permitting agencies niyan. Bago pa makarating yung iyong imported na input, bago makarating sa iyong factory. So what's the sense of an income tax holiday or a 5% gross income in lieu of everything if you're not even able to produce your output as many and as fast as possible? So what we're just saying here is we need to rationalize incentives because this is only one of the tools that are necessary, one of the tools that is necessary for this country to develop. Mas marami po kasi na dapat tayong i-address na issues, like the number of agencies that need to give a go signal for an enterprise or for a company to even register or exist. Napakarami hong kailangang gawin, no, bago ka maging isang legitimate na company. Ang nakakatawa, even closing a corporation, not just a corporation, kahit isang single proprietorship, napakahirap hong gawin. I tried to do it, open and close a single proprietorship. Napakahirap pong proseso. Hahanapan ka ng kung ano-anong papeles. So it's something that needs to be done. So kasama po sa rationalization of fiscal incentives, we also need to address other systems and processes in government. At bakit po naman natin gustong, kumbaga, why do we want to widen the tax base? Because we also need more funds so that we can develop our infrastructure and also allow us to spend more on education, educating our children, helping them to grow up more skilled, more trained, and healthier. So yun yung dapat na pinagtutuunan ng pansin. That's where we need to invest, no? Not just in physical capital, but also in human capital. This is looking at the next generation already of Filipinos, because we want to leave a legacy that of a country that gives them better benefits in terms of livelihood.
Yes, Gov, please.
Ma'am, I just have a question. How strong do you think let's say the correlation is between very low foreign direct investment and our policy that foreign foreigners can only own 40% of a business. In other words, I'm a foreign investor. I want to invest in the Philippines, but I cannot have majority control of what I'm investing. I mean, what do you think the relationship is? Malakas ba? Is that one of the reasons why ang mababa ang FDI natin?
Sir, that could be pointed out as one of the reasons, especially when it comes to certain sectors. No? Kasi napaka-strict ng constitutional provision natin with regard to 60-40. So, that's one of the things that we're looking at. Although, sometimes the constitutional provision can also be met by a more strategic crafting of the rules and regulation. So, that can be allowed, pero in terms of a more creative rules and regulation framework.
I think yung ownership of land has not much bearing. But in ownership of companies, yun yung naka-apekto. Like the 60-40 requirements for telecommunications and all. And I think if you look at that naman talaga, it has become so outdated. Even brokerage yata or freight or what are limited, no? So I think there is a need to review that. So there is now a question actually in the business sector whether there is a need to amend, is there a need to amend the Constitution to get this, or just the implementing regulation, or just a definition of what public services is. So there are many things now that are being discussed. And I think yung changing the Constitution would be maybe last. There are many things that we can do meantime within the current framework.
Yes,
If
go.
I just may add, ma'am, because I came from the private sector, and the most afraid type of commodity is financial capital. So when you're looking to invest, and the more obstacles you find, there are so many other places to choose from. No? So, the less risky it is for me as a foreigner to invest in the Philippines, the better it is. So, I think tama ka, ma'am. And, I think there are ways to go around it. But, like I said, as an investor, if I was going to look at the ASEAN 5, I can look at Vietnam, I can look at Cambodia, the medyo mas relaxed ang regulations for foreign direct investment. Thank you, ma'am.
Jem, you want to add?
If I may lang pa, I wanted to go back also to the point first made by there. Yung first question po, I just wanted to add a little to what Assistant Secretary had said. If I'm reading this the proposal properly, the way I see it, at the end of the day, pag na-implement na po itong proposals po na to, what will happen is incentives will continue for those kung saan kailangan, and may not be as generous for those sectors na perhaps hindi naman pala kailangan doon because the investments would have happened anyway. Parang ganun po that the mechanisms that this law wants to change, who's monitoring, what will be granted, how many years, the studies behind it, parang ganun po ang pinupuntahan nung proposal po na to. So again, I think it will continue for investments na kailangan ng ma-incentivize na itong tax incentives. But for those who really don't need it, maybe not. I think, in one word, I think what I believe what this proposal is doing is it's adding judiciousness, kumbaga, to the granting of tax incentives. Hindi lang ho, if I may use the word, hindi lang ho improperly targeted the way I think it has been done in the past.
Yeah, so we want to be clear that the intention of government is not to remove the incentives, but we just want to make sure that we maximize the benefits of the incentives. No? So I think that should be clear, no? Kasi kaya maraming natatakot about when we talk about fiscal incentives, it's because they thought it will be removed completely. No, we recognize. I think government recognizes that we need this to invite more investors in the country, to be more competitive with our neighboring countries. You want to add, Director Mitch? Okay. More questions? If there's, yes, sir. Please introduce yourself. Sige po.
Good afternoon. I'm Delphine Marquez, representing PBDEC Industrial Authority, a government corporation managing the special economic zone in Misamis Oriental. Some of our locators are PEZA registered enterprise enjoying tax incentives like holidays, 5% gross income tax, and the VAT zero rated transactions. So one of the interesting features of TRIN law is the removal of VAT zero rating on sale of goods or services to PEZA registered enterprise companies. But this provision was vetoed by the President and stated that VAT zero rating should only be limited to direct exporters. Now my question is, does this vetoed provision immediately remove the existing VAT zero rating enjoyed by PEZA registered enterprise?
Director Abdon or Ase Capitan?
Yung PEZA law po kasi hindi pa ginalaw, no? So, status quo pa rin po siya ngayon, and the provision naman in TRIN is that the refund, it will only be implemented if the refund system is already efficient, which means that the BIR can refund in 90 days. Nakalagay po yan dun sa bill. So sa ngayon po, it's still status quo.
Sige po. Thank you. A second question po, ma'am, is the enhanced VAT refund system already in place? So if it's in place, what are the procedures, ma'am? What are we going to do?
Ito po ay pinaprocess or pinaprocess sa BIR. Pinag-aaralan po nila kung paano ipaiklian yung current na number of days na nagpa-process sila ng VAT refund. But I think ASEC may add because she's in the...
Sorry. Right now, we want to have BIR complete all the processing and the approval of the VAT refund within 90 days. So yun po yung end goal natin. Currently, nasa 120 days kasi sila and that's just the approval. No, that's just the processing. So we want that already narrowed. No? So it takes time. We have asking them to review all the processes kasi baka naman merong nadodouble, and they might also wish to use more widely yung risk-based audit system. No? So ang intention natin is to be at least at par with our neighbors na when you go out, if you're a tourist or you're a foreign guest for example, in Vietnam, when you leave the airport, when you go to the airport, there's a booth there for a VAT refund. No, we still don't have that. And unfortunately, yun nga, hindi pa natin kayang gawin. But that is where we want to be later on, that VAT refunds are provided as expeditiously as possible. So yun ho ang intention. Because the reason why we invented the term indirect exporters is precisely to provide for this. Hindi natin na ibibigay agad-agad yung refund, no? So exporters, so that they will not be, yung cash flow nila will not be impaired, we allow that parang zero-rated din yung kanilang mga providers ng inputs. But that should not be. The zero rating should only be a benefit of a direct exporter.
Thank you po.
Let me add lang to your question. Kasi palaging tinatanong I know that may fears pa rin kayo because under the old VAT law, 120 days nga binigay, but have you gotten any of your refunds in 120 days? Wala, di ba? It takes 5 years, whatever, on the average. Now, ang magandang in-include dito sa train, it has become like a mandatory thing, and any BIR official nakalagay doon who fails to refund within 90 days will be dealt with administratively. So I think my cloak na on the heads of the BIR guys to really refund it within 90 days. But my thinking there is that there has to be a lot of technology that goes into it because then it requires matching of input and output as reported by one taxpayer with another taxpayer. I think they are now working on this.
Thank you, Attorney
Okay
Dick.
na?
You want to ask another question, sir? Different.
bago
Kailan
ito,
na
bago ito.
salamin ko. Sandali nga po.
Okay.
Okay po, go.
Good afternoon once again. I'm Mabs Damahan po from Media rin. Lagi na lang tayo magtanong dito. Kay Asik Habitan, no? Kaganda ng presentation niya kanina sa mga pagbabago po sa itong mga tax natin po. Ang lagi problema, ma'am, ay itong collection target natin sa tax. Lagi tayo ay hindi mamimit po yung tax collection natin. Lagi ng problema po ng pamahalaan. Paano yan ma-improve itong pagkukolekta natin ng mga tax? Marami naman tayo mga magandang batas, pero pagdating sa implementation, hindi ma-achieve po yung mga collection natin sa tax.
Salamat po doon sa tanong, no? Paano nga ba natin ma-achieve lahat yung targets? Ang ano ho dito, yung targets ho kasi natin, revenue collection targets, are, we take into consideration, ano ba yung tax base, kunyari sa BIR, no? So, ginagamit naming factor dyan, ano ba yung growth ng economy na fino-forecast, no? Tapos, meron ding factored na collection efficiency naman ng ating collecting bureaus. So, alam natin na, kunyari, for this tax, 60% ang talagang efficiency, no? So, meron tayong fina-factor in then every year na improvement in the collection through administrative efficiency. 0.3% po yan taon-taon. Ngayon, meron ding batas ngayon na talagang dito takot ang BIR at BOC, yung attrition law. Napakahigpit po kasi nito. Kasi if they fall, kumbaga if their target, if their collection falls against the target by more than, I think it's 8.75%. Somebody from BIR. 7.5%. Meron silang na-invent na word They become attritable. Correct? They become attritable. Ibig sabihin, at the worst, they can be removed from service or at least they can be moved. No? They can be taken away from where they are right now. So may penalties po yun. So talagang so far naman, since that law has come into effect, rightfully or wrongfully, their collection performance has not fallen below 7.5% of the target. Kumbaga, 7.5, yun na yung kumbaga allowable na plus or minus ng ating binigay ng batas. Now, how else can we improve collections also? Dito po naman yung ginagawa natin dito is try to simplify our collection, the tax collection structure. Kasi kung marami pa hong kailangang, you have to jump through several hoops for you to collect or for the taxpayer to pay, then it also becomes harder for the revenue collecting agency to collect. So, paano pa ba natin pwedeng simplihan ang pagbabayad ng buwis? So, we might go to more electronic systems of paying our taxes or even filing our taxes. So that will also help BIR to do much more of their other things that they can do to facilitate transactions. So we try to do away with BIR having to call on taxpayers to defend their tax return. We'll try to do away with that. No? For once, that's a governance issue. Yan ho nangyayari. Pag ayaw ho natin magkaroon ng mata sa mata na magkikita lagi ang ating tax collector at ang taxpayer. Ayaw po natin nun. So we also want to address issues like, ano ba talaga yung tax base? So the law has to be very definite what it is. Kuminsan ho kasi, our laws, while they can be elegant, they can be worded very nicely, pagdating ho sa implementation, nagkakalituhan. Hindi natin alam kung ano yung definition talaga ng ating tax base. Mas alam ho yata yan ni Attorney Dick. No? So we try to craft laws and we propose to Congress very, very simply worded provisions para the BIR or the BOC will no longer have to do their own interpretation. So the law has, as much as possible, has to be very plainly written. Para there's no room for guessing, no? Kasi when you guess, when you ask a tax collector to guess what the rightful tax base is, we're likely to come up with the wrong answer and to the detriment of the taxpayer. Because a tax collector will always decide in favor of government kung ano yung mas malaki. Ganun lang po. No? So, we're conscious of that, no, about targets. And in fact, we at the DOF are the ones setting these targets. No? So we're very conscious of that. And we're also driving BIR and BOC to perform better by also helping them introduce more systems into their processes and procedures.
Okay, ma'am, salamat. Sana ang batas sa pagkolekta ng tax yung maiwas taxes ay magbayad ng taxes ay mingipin ng mga batas natin, ma'am. Yan lang ang may suggest ko rito sa forum na ito.
Thank you for your suggestion. Indeed, no, yung tax administration po is equally important, no, on tax policy. Kaya I think government naman knows about that. And in fact, there are a lot of ongoing reforms in BIR and BOC. BIR, where Admir is also helping and his team on electronic filing tsaka electronic payment, yung binanggit ni ASECTE kanina. And there are also representatives from BIR here still with us. So just in case po, please feel free, no, to get the mic and magdagdag po kayo if you have anything to say. More questions from the audience, sir?
Thank you. This is Ike Romero of the General Santos City Chamber of Commerce. My question is regarding the beneficiaries of the tax incentives. It was mentioned that the electronics and the BPOs are the highest beneficiaries in terms of revenue loss to the government. Now, I just would like to know if there is already a study on the benefits that the government has taken, aside from job generations, in terms of financial benefits the government has gained out of the losses suffered due to tax incentives.
Cost benefit siguro.
Yeah, cost benefits in terms financial, not only job generations.
Ito po yung pag-aaral na ginagawa ngayon ng NEDA. It's NEDA which has been tasked to do the cost-benefit analysis. And we're waiting for them to be done with the study. Kasi kailangan nga rin po nating, we need to balance, no? Ano ba talaga yung benefits na nakukuha natin? And you're right, it goes beyond just job generation. Has it improved the quality of lives? Has it improved, raised the real wages in this sector? So those are the things that we also wish to find out. Pero NEDA po ang in charge doon.
Yes, sir.
Again, this is my second time to ask question, ma'am. I'm Benny Claudio, the Vice President of Jensen Chamber. This is actually more of the system that we are now implementing, especially in the collection. Since we have a new RDO here, and welcome, ma'am, Curly, and Jensen. You know, the problem really is we have e-filing. But the thing is, how long will it take for us to be filing this by way of e-filing? Number two, we are paying car. Okay? How long will the car be having the, what's this? Because it's controlled by the national government. Galing po yan sa head office. Hindi po dito nag-generate yung approval niyan doon po sa Manila. And third, yung titling process. Nagbabayad ka na, ang tagal-tagal ng titulo lalabas. So ano po, kailan po natin ma-upgrade ang system natin sa computer? That's one. Kailan po magkakaroon ng solusyon itong titling process natin? Nagbabayad ka na, ang tagal-tagal. Ang tagal-tagal po. So alam ko na this one is outsourced to a private sector. Kaya po nagmahal yung titling natin. So wala bang paraan na ma-upgrade natin ang computer system natin? Kasi yun po ang problema eh. Nandiyan na in place na, E-filing, okay. Car, once you pay, ang tagal-tagal ng bago mag-feedback ang head office ng BIR. So, yun lang po ang mga problema nakikita namin sa implementation. Ano pong comment natin dito sa upgrading?
Ang comment ko po dyan ay ibabato ko po sa aking colleague sa BIR. Pakibigyan po ng mikropono ang
the new
aking mga
RDO?
kaibigan sa BIR.
Director? Ma'am, Director, do you want to join us, Director, please, here on stage? Huh? Oh, okay.
Good afternoon. I'm from the BAR. In fact, yung sa sinasabi ni Sir Claudio, Venerando Claudio, yung ating sa e-car, kasi electronically generated na yung certificate authorizing registration natin sa transfer of properties. Nagkakaproblema lang minsan sa ating system, yung internet natin. Minsan kasi nagkakaroon ng slowdown. But we are really doing everything para ma-fast track yung issuance of the e-car. In fact, kailangan within 5 days mailabas yun once completed na yung mga requirements. And then dun sa system din natin sa e-filing, may mga mga enhancements being made para mapabilis na rin yung system natin, yung internet. So, I hope you bear with us.
May we ask Admir, because you're working with BIR Central Office, Admir, especially, Admir is an IT expert who's working with BIR.
Yes, BIR cannot address issues, but what they can do is, and what they are doing is to transfer some private sector banks. So banks should be the place where you are paying, and taxpayers should use online infrastructure of the bank to pay tax liabilities. So in that case, you will not depend on the infrastructure and the system of the BIR. So if the system of BIR is not working, you can still pay your taxes, and they will be properly remitted to BIR and to the
Sir Claudio, are you satisfied, or do you have any follow-up question?
Because it's, if you source it out to the banks will not be the one to sign the card. It's still the BIR, RDO, or his assistant. So meaning, the system in place for BIR should be upgraded. Yun lang po. Kasi katulad nito, Alpha List, meron pong deadline yan. End of January. Actually, it's 29 or 30. Naipadala na yung Alpha List, tapos wala pang confirmation. How many days bago nagkaroon ng confirmation? So it's really the system that is the problem. Kaya para matulungan po natin ang ating BIR sa pagkolekta, i-upgrade natin ang system. Kasi nagbabayad na tayo, pumipila pa tayo. Ayaw ni Digong yan eh. Diba? Taga Mindanao si Digong, ayaw niya yan. So these are the things that should be avoided. Upgrading should be from the top yan eh. Hindi lang dito sa ibaba. Kasi pinupukpok natin ang ibaba, samantalang ang system natin sa taas, hindi naman nag-improve. So yun lang po yung kasi ang nabiblame dito ang local. Ang tagal-tagal. So follow up ka, to the point na ituturo yung system. Nung magawa mo rin, systems failure. So nagkakaroon po tayo ng problema. Magbabayad ka na nga, nahirapan ka pa, pipila ka pa. Di ba?
Apa. Salamat po. Alam niyo po, ako rin sa taga Metro Manila, ayoko rin po na nagbabayad na nga ako, pinapapila pa ako eh. So I think the problem is really not just here, no? It's really nationwide eh. There's really a very wide room to improve processes at the BIR. Narinig po namin yon, we listen to that, and we hope to be able to do something about it.
Good afternoon, ma'am. I am Raymond Salangsang, Regional Governor of PCCI sa Southwestern Mindanao. I would just like to comment on what you said about expansion ng mga businesses, ma'am. You mentioned that those expansion should not be provided with incentives anymore. Kasi, ibig sabihin, pag nag-expand sila, kumikita na yung business. But the thing is, ma'am, yung minsan necessary ang expansion so that you can improve your profitability. And there is an opportunity sa market na makapag-business ka pa. So, hindi dapat hindi dapat i-discourage yung mga exemption by withholding incentives sa kanila. Pwede natin bigyan ng incentives pa rin yung expansion, but there should be a sunset provision doon sa unang incentive. Like, put up mo ng project, I would agree na hindi dapat forever yung incentives na yon. There should be a sunset provision. But then, once mag-expand itong business na ito, sa kanyang provided, no, let's say, sabihin natin na 80% of his capacity or 90% of his capacity na exhaust niya na, then meron pa siyang opportunity to do business, then we should encourage them to expand by giving another incentives dun sa kanilang expansion. Hindi dapat siya na i-deny na natin yung incentives dun sa expansion. And another thing, ituloy ko na din, ma'am, yung sinabi ni attorney kanina yung from PCCI regarding yung sa accounting practices sa mga MSMEs na up to 3 million na sales, ma'am, parang may ibang accepted na accounting. Sana we should harmonize yung definition nung MSMEs sa Department of Finance, dun din sa BOI or sa mga other agencies, ma'am, kasi parang hindi siya nagsisynchronize. Ang micro for BOI is up to 1 million capitalization, medium is up to this much, ganyan, no? So, i-harmonize lang natin, ma'am, kung ano ba talaga ang definition natin itong MSMEs.
Anyone? Asikte, Attorney Baladad, you want to respond?
Siguro pag-usapan natin yung expansion, no? Sabi nyo nga, kung nasa 80% capacity ka pa, and then you think that there's something more to be gained from expanding your operations. Personally, I think it's a personal decision, it's a business decision that you need to make regardless of whether there are incentives or not. Kasi if the only positive thing that impels you to proceed with your expansion is because meron kang incentive, maybe that's not the right basis for making the decision. The decision to expand should be on whether or not your business will gain more, will profit more because of that. Hindi naman po namin buong-buo na aalisin ng incentive for expansion. Meron din po, expansions will still be allowed exemption from capital goods, duties on capital goods. So, meron pa rin po namang duty exemption yon. So, yun po. At saka yung harmonization, agree po ako dyan. Kasi ang mahirap yung nag-uusap tayo, isa kaming gobyerno, iba yung definition sa DOF, iba yung definition sa BOI, iba yung definition sa BIR. Kailangan po we speak one language. Isa lang ang, pag sinabi naming small and medium enterprise, this is what a small and medium enterprise should look like in terms of capitalization.
I understand, Asikte, na hindi naman po lahat yata ng expansion aalisan ng incentives. Di ba? Tama ba, Director Mitch? No, ma'am, no? Not all, lahat.
The exemption will remain. The
duty exemption will remain. Okay. ITH. Jem, you want to add?
I just wanted to add po just a few words lang po andun sa expansion. Ano? Kasi yung government po, ASEC Capitan and Director Rolly earlier, they hold this parang unenviable task of balancing, doing a balancing act for government, di ba? If you think about it, for every peso that the government gives as incentives, means that that's a peso lost on the budget. Di ba? Where government now has to weigh, where is it more productive? Giving the incentive to the private sector to increase investments, let's say it does increase investments, or should it just collect it and spend it elsewhere in a very productive way. Di ba ganun ho yung balancing act na ginagawa ng government. Now, when you talk about expansion, government now has to weigh and has, of course, it needs information to be able to weigh itong counterbalance na to. Is the expansion being done as you had suggested, ano? Is it being done for increased profitability? Will it give it to that, or will it choose to give the incentive to a startup? Parang ganun eh. It has to weigh, hindi ho endless yung tax revenues ng government na it can just continue giving granting tax incentives in the way it has done in the past. Mahirap po yung ginagawa nilang weighing and counterbalance. So if the reason for investing more is increased profitability in the future, government now asks itself, if I don't grant this incentive, will the investment happen anyway? Kumbaga, yun ho yung laging iniisip ng government, and that's the way it should be thinking when it grants these tax incentives going forward.
So again, we want to reiterate, no, that it's not just a marketing tool, yung incentives, but it's also potential loss, no, yung mga exemptions and incentives. It's a potential loss of income for government.
Let me add lang
yes.
to that, no, on the incentives. Because incentives is not bad per se. It's a tool, di ba? So it's a tool to affect or to direct a certain behavior to happen. And I'll give you an example. In Singapore, napaka-direct. When you spend and send your employees abroad to study or to attend conferences, that's a behavior that they want to encourage. And therefore, any cost that you spend on that will be 8 times deductible. So 800 times deductible to your... If you spend in R&D, research and development, they want that behavior to happen. So they said, okay, times 4 of the cost, you can deduct it from your income tax. Yung mga ganon. So here, I think that is also what they want to do. Yung behavior that they want to encourage, doon na pupunta yung incentives natin. Now, on the harmonization, I know what you're thinking about is the BAMBI law, the Barangay Micro Business Enterprise, di ba? And that is for exemption. If you have an asset ba or a capital of 2 million yata, you can be exempt from taxes. I think that's under BAMBI law. Here, in the train law, it's not about exemption. It's about treating you as a small taxpayer for you to be entitled to the 8% gross tax optional. But if you look at the train, they have in fact harmonized all references na lahat na makikita mo, threshold nila is 3M. 3 million for simple bookkeeping, 3 million for the 8% tax, 3 million na wala nang yung mga ganon. So they have harmonized and made 3 million as the common threshold for all. But yeah, I would say maybe it would be good. Kaya lang, ang problema kasi dun sa revenue, pag ginawa mong capital yung reference mo, there seems to be some inequities because there are industries that are not heavily capitalized. For example, yung mga professionals, wala namang assets mga yan eh. Service providers, wala namang masyadong assets. But if you go into manufacturing and production, 2 million is so small. So, and yet, ang liit ng income mo, ng spread mo. Pero kung service ka, almost 90% is your income, di ba? Because you are not heavily capital intensive. Oo.
Okay. Okay. Yes, ma'am. Okay.
Good afternoon. I'm Carol Gamboa from PBDEC. We have a follow-up questions now. So regarding the expanded functions of FIRB, doesn't some of those functions diminish the IPA's authority? Then second, focusing on those companies registered in economic zones, if you will be providing a sunset provision for the tax incentives, what happens when these companies kanang ma-max out na nila ang period to enjoy those incentives, but usually these companies are registered for like 25 to 50 years. So what happens to the economic zone? Will these companies stay or move out? Then are these companies allowed to register with other IPAs after the expiration? So like from TESA, pwede ba sila mag-register to BOI after? So your comments, please. Thank you.
It's precisely that behavior which we want to prevent. Kaya sabi nga namin, our incentives are not meant to last. So economic zones exist for a reason. So if you have right now 10 locators, for example, does not stop you from encouraging more locators to come in. So as one locator maxes out their incentives and they move out of the zone, you should have, you can encourage other locators to come in also. Diba? So we simply want to make some sense of our very complex, complicated, convoluted investment providing system. Because we almost cannot track, monitor which locator actually started in what IPA, which incentive law are they now following. Kasi kung minsan pagtapos na dun sa isa, they come back, register in another. So parang ano yung, do they only exist because they have incentives? So where's the sustainability? It's not really meant to be that Kaya tayo nagbibigay ng incentive to startups or to certain companies is because we want them to flourish in the future. Kumbaga, and I will go back to comparison with raising a baby. Ang baby kasi, pag sanggol pa yan, talagang asikaso mo, lahat provided mo siya. And then you teach them how to walk, you guide them. But after a certain point, you allow this child to grow up and live on their own. And it's the same thing that we should also apply to our incentivized companies. We allow them to sink or swim depending on how well they manage their companies.
So, what's gonna happen, Asek, yung mga other LGUs, because there's, I see Mayor here, na mga walang mga economic zones, how will they benefit from this?
Kasi ngayon naman, yung ibang merong economic zones sa LGUs, they also lose control of their local taxes. They lose And then they only share. Meron lang silang share. So, wala yung, parang nawawala yung fiscal autonomy mismo ng local governments.
Because I remember a lot of local governments, when I worked in Congress, talagang all of them wants to have economic zone in their respective areas because they feel that this is the only way that they can be competitive and to invite more investors. So, but yun lang, if they don't have economic zones, then it means that they're not benefiting, but they are still losing. In fact, they are losing local taxes. Because remember, you presented earlier that there are certain industries that receive exemptions from all taxes in lieu of, for example, a franchise tax of a telecommunications company. Because that was part of the presentation earlier. Can you please enlighten us as well?
But can I just I just wanted to add a point. If we go back to the concept of yung tax incentive, di ba? Mentioned earlier is that in up until now, the government, one side of the government, has been treating itong tax incentives na to as primarily a marketing tool to sell an investment destination, di ba? Increase investments in my zone, I'll give you this, di ba? Parang marketing tool lang siya. But if you think about it, it's a marketing tool, However, it's a marketing tool with a potentially vast fiscal consequence to everyone else. Diba? As we said nga, a peso foregone in tax incentives is a peso foregone in the budget. Diba? So if you when you say that this eventually diminishes the what do you call this, the role of the IPA, rather than saying it diminishes their role, I think we should start to think that the tax incentive, by it being what we call a tax expenditure, it's that foregone revenue concept na foregone peso, foregone budget, diba? Yung ganon, diba? So if you think about it, the role of granting tax incentives does not belong to just one single entity of government, diba? Kasi ang dami hong naapektuhan. If you think from the very beginning, it's the budget that's affected by the tax incentive, diba? It's a foregone revenue, and it's also a budget. It has budget consequences. So it's the task of a lot of layers in government that should come together to discuss whether the tax incentive is more efficient than spending it in the budget. So I think that's also one of the things that we saw in this proposal. It brings together, kumbaga, it brings together the entities of government that have a stake in granting tax incentives. Not just the IPA, not just DTI, not just BOI, not just the DOF, not just DBM, not just NEDA. It's all together.
Ito siguro, hopefully, itong huling kwento ko na to tungkol sa fiscal incentives. Nung sabi nga natin, we've been discussing this for at least the last 20 years. No? Now, there was one high-level discussion on this many years ago. And I actually heard one cabinet secretary say na, alam mo, kailangan talaga natin yung fiscal incentives eh. Bakit kamo? Parang ano lang yan eh. Ang Pilipinas, para yung tendera na hindi maganda. Actually, sabi nga na pangit daw na tendera. Meron ka maliit na sari-sari store na doon ka sa dulo ng isang sirasarang kalsada, hindi ka pupuntahan kung wala kang fiscal incentive. You know, I felt so insulted. Una, it was a very sexist remark. Bakit hindi nga pwedeng sabihin pangit na tendero? Bakit pangit na tendera? Una-una, di ba? And it does not really address or even provide a solution. Kung sira-sira yung kalsada mo, edi ipaayos mo yung kalsada. And for that, you need more capital. You don't need to give away your products. You don't need to give away your taxes for that. No? So it's a very short-sighted solution. Yes, we need fiscal incentives. Why not? But it is not the only reason why investors come into the country. They want better roads. They want internet connection that will allow electronic filing of taxes. They want internet which works, Wi-Fi connections which work 24 hours in a day. So much speed when you try to download or upload yung income tax return which you need to fill up and fill in. Pag nagsasabit ka ng data mo doon, hindi biglang nagka-crash yung site ng BIR. Those are the things that we need. And for that, we need the budget to spend. We need the budget, di ba? So I hope now, masyadong tumatak sa akin yung kwento na yun ng cabinet secretary na yun eh. Sabi niya, para yung tinderang pangit na tindera. Kaya kailangan ibenta niya yung kanyang goods na mura. Yan ang fiscal incentives. My gosh! I hope we have moved far from that. No? Hindi na po tayo, unang-una, hindi na tayo sexist. Pangit na tindero na po siya ngayon. No? But we should think of more creative solutions to attract more investors into the country, address the real problems why we lack more investors here.
Asikta is very passionate about this kasi 20 years na pinag-uusapan itong rationalization of fiscal incentives. Yes, sir.
Sir, I would like to look at granting of incentives this way, sir. In the first place, those industries are not here with us. So we're not earning from them. Now, we invited them, we attracted them to locate here in our country. So when they locate here in our country, there are other industries that will flourish because they were present in our country. Like, for example, let's say a coconut processing manufacturing plant will locate here in our place. Who will benefit from them? Those coconut farmers will benefit from them. So the government will be earning from the coconut industry. Those packaging industries would benefit from them. So the government would benefit from the taxes that those packaging companies will pay. The generation of employment. So the community would benefit because there would be employment generated, jobs for the people. Now, the people will spend their money buying their consumption, right? So those sari store, those supermarkets would benefit. So wag na natin tignan yung makukuha natin doon sa industry na pumasok. But yung totality na mako-contribute ng industries na yon, we might not be earning from him, but we can be earning from the others.
Again,
wala ho tayong dyan. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Diba? Hindi namin sinasabi na wala na tayong incentives. We're not saying that. We're saying, yes, we need the incentives, but hindi lang po incentives ang kailangang ibigay ng gobyerno sa isang negosyo na gustong pumasok sa Pilipinas. Because nakita niyo po yung graph ko kanina, mas marami yung pumapasok in terms of percent of GDP, mas marami yung pumupunta sa Cambodia. Kumpara ho sa Pilipinas. And why? Bakit? No? Probably because their rules and regulation with regard to for providing permits are much easier. Wala ho tayong argumento tungkol sa hindi na ho ako makikipagtalo sa inyo tungkol diyan. Ang punto de vista lang po namin dito, we are not taking away incentives. We are not. Because we recognize the value of providing fiscal incentives. But you also have to recognize our position from our point of view. Na ang fiscal incentives, hindi kailangan forever. Yun lang kung forever ang aming problema dyan Dahil nga nakita nyo naman, there are companies which have been enjoying incentives for the last 30 years. Tama ho ba naman yun? Tama ho ba naman yun? And sabi nga po ni Jem dito, 1 peso na hindi namin nakolekta sa taxes is 1 peso less for the budget. So bakit lagi na lang may pabor? Kasi itong pagbibigay ng fiscal incentives is government granting a favor to this specific sector. Paano naman po yung ibang sectors? Paano naman po ang the rest of the population? Sabi nga po ninyo, meron hong mga lugar dito sa Pilipinas na kahit anong gawin nila, hindi ho papasukin ng investors yan. Mahirap puntahan, wala silang kuryente. Kahit anong klaseng fiscal incentive siguro ang idangle natin para doon. Hindi sila talaga pupunta. We have island provinces which are cut off. Wala sila talagang kuryente. Sino ho ang pupunta dyan? Sino ho ang magtatayo ng negosyo dyan? Fiscal incentives ho ba ang sagot sa kanilang problema? Ang argument po namin, ang position po namin, hindi. Kailangan bigyan natin sila ng budget, bigyan natin sila ng kuryente. Bigyan natin sila ng mas magandang paaralan, bigyan natin sila ng mga doktor, allow more doctors, pagandahin ho natin ang kanilang paaralan, allow more teachers to go there. Yun ho, kaya gusto ho namin i-control, mas ma-manage natin ang ating fiscal incentives para naman yung mga dapat na talagang magbayad at the regular tax rates, magbayad na po. Bakit naman po natin lagi silang ililibre? Hindi naman ho siguro tama yun. At pag siguro ho tanungin nyo yung local government units na nawawalan talaga ng local taxes, hindi rin po tama yun It's also not right. So that's my last word. Kahit ano pa hon sabihin ninyo, yun na po.
Just a follow-up, ma'am. I'm just saying, ma'am, na there are other entities also that are doing something like I am a member also of the Regional Competitiveness Council. So in the Competitiveness Council, we are also looking at how we can become competitive in other ways, like in governance, infrastructure, in resiliency, and ano ba isang pillar? Economy, right? So may mga ginagawa na ho doon. So we hope na the sooner that we can do better in those aspects, then the country would be more competitive. So wag lang sana munang siguro kung may gagawin tayo sa mga incentives o sa fiscal ko natin, magiging more attractive siya kasi marami pa tayong mga ginagawa sa ibang aspects.
Sir, very quick lang po. There are about 800,000 plus firms registered in the SEC, di ba, corporations. If you look at the number of firms benefiting from tax incentives, they're about, at any one point, there's about 4,000 versus 800,000. I think that the 760,000 would be happier with the corporate income tax rate of lower than 25%, di ba? I think that will be more, if you ask me, that will be more beneficial for everyone else rather than the few receiving incentives and that headline corporate rate of 30%.
Anyone? Mitch, I saw you wanted to say something, and Attorney Dick.
Just to add, to reiterate lang din po yung sinabi ni Asek kanina, that incentives, one of the principles in giving incentives is the principle of being performance-based. As you said earlier, na there's parang, spillover effect in the community. So, yung mga, one measure po malamang natitignan when giving incentive is the ability of that activity to generate the positive spillovers. And also, I think in the draft bill that countryside development is also considered in one of the parang tinitignan na measure.
Location, yung area, no, para to influence the investors to go to the provinces and not in Metro Manila anymore, no. Yun yung. At saka, I think, important talaga yung cost-benefit analysis because dun din lalabas yung mga ganitong mga sinasabi ng Vice Governor natin in the region. No, yung mga, kung paano natin na ma-maximize yung mga benefits, ano yung impact ng incentives na binibigay natin sa mga corporation. Kasi, for example, if like what Jem mentioned, out of 800,000 registered company, 4,000 lang yung nakakatanggap ng incentive. Siguro kahit i-multiply pa natin ng times 10 or times 20 yon, no? Na kasi ibig sabihin, yung times 10 or times 20 na yun yung nakakatanggap din ng mga, nagbe-benefit dun sa company who receives incentives. But napakaliit pa rin compared to the entire universe. So, I know there's a question from a lady at the back.
Can I just add
gentleman.
on the Vice
Sorry.
Governor lang?
Sorry,
Isa lang.
sir. Sandali
And
lang
I'd
po.
like to pick up from his example. No? Kasi, I think what the government is trying to do now is i-limit kung anong industry siya, ganun-ganon. Now, if for example, that industry that you were talking about, wala sa radar ng IPP, the Investment Priorities Plan, there is a way out. Dun sa presentation kanina, I saw that they are giving the President the power to select and give incentives. So maybe that's a way out, that if we can convince the President that this one is really needed and it's for the benefit of the country to have them and to give incentives, baka pwede yon. My only question to them is, are we not politicizing the process?
That's a good point. That's a good point. I think at least that's noted, no? Sir?
Okay, good afternoon. I'm Neil Cachuela from Jensen Economic Zone. My question is basically one, is it possible, because of this forum, is it possible for the national government to provide special sort of benefits or incentive benefits for Mindanao-based businessmen or somebody who would like to invest in Mindanao? It is very specific because we have a convergence of economic zone in Mindanao. It's being organized by MINDA. And one of the common concern really is selling economic zones or attracting direct investments, especially foreign investments in Mindanao. So what I'm trying to say is that instead of providing uniform incentives all over the country, why not craft specific incentives for Mindanao. Number one reason is that, as mentioned by our resource speakers, that in terms of infrastructure, we're really, di ba? Talo kami. May Mindanao pa na pangalan, talo na kami, di ba? If you try to sell Mindanao, because in the past, I was also part of the team that promotes economic zones in Mindanao. Economic zones in Mindanao with DTI. We went to different embassies in Manila, and the common observation, common comments by the commercial attaches that it's hard to invest in Mindanao because, number one, they could not, try to encourage their businessmen to just go to Mindanao because of the, Mindanao tagline. So sa pangalan pa lang, sabi ko nga, talo na kami. And in terms of infrastructure, in terms of telecommunications, in terms of, talo pa rin kami. So I think this is now the right time for us to craft specific incentives that are more palatable compared to other parts of the country. Kasi nga, pareho lang yung incentives namin. Pagkatapos, we are in Mindanao, so talo na kami. So in that case, and that will support also the government trust to develop the countryside and to decentralize and try to, pull out investments from the metros, from Metro Manila, to put it in Mindanao. Thank you.
I think what he's trying to say also is the peace and order situation kasi it's the perception, no? Because of the peace and order situation in Mindanao. Gov, you want to say something? Yung microphone po, it's here po. The mic po is here.
I just wanted to add because is everyone here from Mindanao or may Luzon, Visayas, wala taga diri tatanan? You know what? When people say Mindanao is a place where people don't want to invest. I spoke last week in Manila to investors. And I said, if you are, kung herd mentality ka, if you go with the herd, you really won't invest in Mindanao. But if you are a true investor and you really buy low, sell high, you look for places where there are opportunity, Mindanao is the key. I'm telling you, because local investors are expanding. While people are staying away, local investors are expanding. I'll give you Lapanday. They are scaling up their banana productions. Alcantara Group is also expanding. So those that are in the know, they're looking seriously at Mindanao and they're expanding their businesses. So I was trying to speak to these people from Luzon and from other countries and telling them, look, when you say martial law, of course it leaves a bad taste in your mouth. But I'm telling you right now that martial law is allowing local investors to expand. Because when you did not want to go into Mindanao before when security was loose, why will you pull out of Mindanao now when security is tight? Martial law has brought a tighter security and public safety within the entire Mindanao. So ngano karon pa mo mag-pull out? This is the time that you should be taking a more serious look at Mindanao. Anyway, that's just my 2 cents worth. Thank you.
No, but that's very good, Gov, no? I think that's very good input and you should speak more. In Metro Manila, especially, dapat sumama pala kayo sa mga tours, sa mga trips ni Presidente sa, di ba? Yung mga business trips niya so that you can sell Mindanao. It's a good point. I don't know if anybody from our speakers would still want to respond to the suggestion, but I think it's noted. No? And I think it's also part that yung targeted, kaya po ang gusto ng government is that targeted yung incentives. And when we say targeted, one of the things that they will consider is how to develop the countryside. So to attract the investors to invest in the countryside and not in Metro Manila, to decongest also Metro Manila. More questions? Mr. Claudio, sir?
Yes. Just a comment on the items which was propounded from the OF. It's about a question: why go to the Philippines? I'm not using the word 60 per month, but I would rather give you an example. A friend of mine has investments in Cambodia. Okay? He was lured by the Cambodian government to invest in banana. Okay? So, he was ushered to a place, provincial. The roads are not in place, hindi concrete, walang airport, walang wharf. So ang ginawa ng Cambodian government, nilagyan niya ang mga roads concrete, nilagyan ng airport, nilagyan ng wharf. I-develop yan, 1,000 hectares, Filipino, for banana. So yun po ang common na sagot doon. It's not the sexist theme that was propounded by the cabinet, but it's more really on the urgency of the government to respond to investors. Nandiyan na ang kailangan mo. Ito pa mga incentives mo. So it's not because of anything else, but it's more of the responsiveness of the government for the infrastructure. Okay? Ang ngayon tayo nagkaroon ng build. So ngayon, pili pa yung mga lugar. Di ba? But, we are still waiting for that to reach Mindanao. And for Mindanaoans to really to feel the impact of Build program. So my question is actually not on that, but it's more really on a comment only. My question now is this. Transfer pricing. This has never been touched. I involved dito mga MNCs, mga multinationals po. Okay. Is there any tool that the government, especially the BIR or DEOF, has already crafted in order to check on transfer pricing? Like for example, isang multinational nagtayo ng isang entity dito, pagkatapos ang daming mga branches abroad o marami silang mga subsidiaries abroad. So ang transfer pricing done from let us say, from Hong Kong or from Thailand to Hong Kong, or from the US to Hong Kong to Thailand to the Philippines. So, paano po natin ma-check yung revenue nila has been really recorded and at the same time reported? Kasi ito po yung common na problema, yung transfer pricing. Meron na ba tayong tool to check on that? Yan lang po.
Jem, I know you can answer that.
Sir, yun po ang if you read the details po itong proposal, actually yun po yung tinutukoy, one of the things na tinutukoy na itong proposal na to. As we've said in the past, there are two big problems arising from the incentives regime dito sa Pilipinas. One is yung poor targeting, yung sinasabi ka na where is the peso most productive, di ba? Dun sa tax incentive or sa budget. That's one, poor targeting. Two is yung prevalence po or this abusive transfer pricing practices na nangyayari. Why? Because of certain rules, presence of some rules and the absence of certain rules to control itong abuses ng transfer pricing. How do I begin? One of the I think the very beginning of okay, let me erase. BIR has a few exactly one revenue regulation on transfer pricing. I don't know if they have succeeded in issuing other revenue regulations on transfer pricing. Diba? In 2013, revenue regulation nila on yung establishing arm's length transactions. Basta may one revenue regulation on transfer pricing. They need one part of the law has to be changed in order to make this effective, and the other succeeding implementing rules on transfer pricing. That's what's in package 2. I'm referring to yung definition po ng related parties in the tax code. it will be strengthened with this proposal. It will be strengthened and made operational. And from there, more rules, more implementing rules will have to be passed by the government in order to control po itong abuse ng transfer pricing. I know it's a bit complex, it's a bit complicated, but doon po manggagaling, and this is, I think, this is a very good start. This proposal is a very good start for the government to begin controlling itong abusive behavior.
Let me just say something on transfer pricing, because it's not our only problem. It's the problem of many other countries that are high tax jurisdiction. Kasi ang tendency, if you're a member of a conglomerate, they tend to go to tax haven countries. Doon nila i-concentrate ang income. How do they do that? Sisingil sila ng malaking, magsusupply sila ng goods, ang jack up ng prices so that they can transfer. They have management services, they give financing, etc., to pull out the income of a company in the jurisdiction and transfer it to a lower jurisdiction. Ngayon ito, away-away ng mga governments din. Because each country would like to get their own share, fair share of the income. Kaya it's not just like an isolated problem natin, but it's a problem for all. Now, ang gumagawa ng mga batas natin, the so-called OECD countries, that's why yung transfer pricing rules na inadapt natin ay basically the guidelines that are being imposed by OECD countries. Ang problema lang, syempre, OECD yan, control dyan ng mga Big Seven or the developed countries, and medyo minor lang ang representation ng developing countries. But recently, what they did is nag-release sila ng BEPS. They call it base erosion and profit shifting, wherein multinationals operating in many countries are required, yung head office are required to submit anong activities mo in this country, anong income na earn mo in this country, etc., so that the total income of the group will be parang depending on the activity that you do in one country, i-allocate nila. I think that's what they are trying to do. But still, well, US, I think, did not sign, I heard. Of course, because mawawalan siya ng revenue. Kasi high tax siya, lahat umaalis sa kanya, no? But most of the other countries, they have signed. In the Philippines, we haven't adopted that yet, I think. But I heard that they are trying to beef up their human resource, their technical expertise, and I heard there is a group of 50 BIR employees that were trained or are being trained for transfer pricing audits. That's what I heard. I don't know, maybe the BIR can confirm.
Time check lang po, 3:40. We have 20 minutes, but we don't have to finish that. If we can go home early, better, di ba? But we still have 20 minutes.
Just to add lang po, transfer pricing does not happen only across border, because there's also domestic transfer pricing, which is also a big problem.
Yeah. It's a big problem, especially if one of the members have incentives. Yeah, kasi there is a tendency to shift doon. Yun yatang binabantayan nila ngayon. Yung within a conglomerate, local conglomerates, isa merong incentive, doon niya dadalhin. So that's what they are also trying to catch. Yeah, even within the same company with two activities, one taxable and non-taxable, sometimes naggaganunan yung Oo. But that's understandable. And I think the BIR should really look into these practices. But what Jem was saying is, parang in-strengthen pa nila, i-strengthen nila yung teeth of the law in this train too.
So to answer Mr. Claudio, no, there's a tool, and I think this is the government is trying to attempt to use that tool in package 2. Kasama po yun sa package 2, no, yung definition of related parties. Sir?
Thank you. This is a follow-up to the question raised by Benny earlier ago regarding the issuance of car and also the transfer of properties. Now, you know, there is a provision and mandate by the President that any local government offices, the clearances should be issued within 5 days upon issuance of completed documents. That is very clear. Now, we have, based on the actual realities, after submission of requirements with the BIR, it's already very seldom that issuance is issued within 5 days. It even took months. And you know, the reasons, major reasons, is not actually on the breakdown of computer breakdown for the issuance of the car, but based on experience, is more on the examiners. It is the delay in the examiner, because once the documents are submitted, there should be already the cutoff time of issuing the clearances should be within 5 days, but it took several months even. So I hope that our local RDOs, who is now has been assigned recently, there should be proper monitoring on the compliance of the 5 days limit for the issuance of certificates of registration or car.
Okay, BIR?
Yes, ma'am. On the issuance of car within 5 days, medyo really felt sorry, sir, no, because lack of manpower, unang-una. The one in charge in generating and encoding for car is only one person for Sarangani and General Santos. And she is catering a lot of application per day. So medyo lack of manpower yung isang issue. Pangalawa, most of the time, kasi si car is centralized. So most of the time, nagkakaroon din ng congestion failure, and at the same time, speed din ng internet. Nagiging speed-related, naging na tayo dependent doon sa kung anong ibibigay ng network. Pangalawa, to address the issue of delay, of who among the employees caused the delay, meron na po tayong routing slip. So you can check kung saan ho ba tumagal yung docket. So, yun po yung nagawa ng intervention ng office in order to address the problems of delay.
So, kung gayon po, pwede ba po for the satisfaction of the paying public, there should be a evaluation on the compliance, how many percent is complied by the office with regards to the mandate of the President, and more or less that should be transparent, and of course, that could be a reason for the office to request for any assistance for the satisfaction of the paying public.
Sir, if I may add, by the way, before anything else, thank you for the warm welcome that the local Chamber of Commerce and Industry is giving me. So, I am the new Revenue District Officer of RD 110 Jensen City, and I just assumed the office of RDO only last January 16. No? So, sir, I really agree with you. I 100% agree with you that we are duty-bound to come up with the issuance of the certificate authorizing registration within 5 days from the submission of complete documents. Much as we are very much committed to come up with this obligation of our office. Sir, I just would like to point out also what are the possible constraints why we cannot come up with this commitment. First, as mentioned earlier by one of our examiners, is of course the lack of manpower. We are catering hundreds, thousands of taxpayers in this area, and real property transactions with applications for car do come in our office, not just in 1 or 2 transactions in a day, but sometimes it reaches 50 transactions in a day. And all of this have to go through the same process. So the time frame allotted for every car is true to all the 50 cars on the average that we have every day. And to protect the interests of the government, these applications must likewise be reviewed thoroughly. And given also the problem on the capacity of our present infra, we also encounter delays brought about by the late uploading of the payment made through the bank, which sometimes would reach 3 days. And that is one area I think that is being also looked into by our top leaders in the BIR, so it can be made faster this time. And another, of course, sir, is the non-compliance at times of our taxpayers on certain requirements that is being asked from the very start. No? But I will not make use of this as a good excuse for not to come up with our commitment. Henceforth, sir, be assured that I will try my very best to shorten what is the existing processing time of CAR, because since my assumption as the RDO of Jensen City, we tried our very best that those that are left pending for the approval of the RDO are being acted upon immediately this time. So that each day that I leave the office, I see to it that there are no applications or cars to be signed pending in my table. So that the following day, I would start with new documents coming in. And if ever there are past transactions that you believe have been overstaying already in our office, I would be very much appreciative if you can come to me and let me know of this situation, and maybe we can be working hand in hand how we can also address whatever is the reason for the delay. Okay? And going back to the transfer pricing, if I may add something in behalf of the BIR, in addition to the transfer pricing training that we and the BIR people have been undergoing for the past years, especially with the large taxpayer service, we have been sent abroad. We have also our internal training for this transfer pricing law. And I'm very happy to know also earlier that this transfer pricing thing is now forming part of the second package of the train. Because as I see it, we are behind by other countries, because in other countries, transfer pricing law is very much in place. Tama po, ma'am? Yeah, in other countries, no, like Malaysia, I think, Indonesia, transfer pricing law is very much in place. And like what Sir was saying earlier, we only have one regulation but to speak of as of today. So I'm happy it's now being incorporated in the train law, because we can already say we already have a law about transfer pricing. Now, in addition to the trainings we have in the BIR for our people also to be competent on transfer pricing analysis, I'm also happy to say that part of the tool that is now available to us is the EOI program of the BIR, which is very much in place. With our treaty partners, we can already gather information relative to cross-border transactions of these multinationals. And as part of the LTB4, I already experienced and have already gained from this kind of program, wherein we were able to gather information from Japan and Indonesia, and this information we got was very much helpful in our audit of the local firm in the Philippines. And it yielded millions of collections, and I hope this can still be continued, and with the addition of our treaty partners, I think this can be additional tool that we can be availing of to augment also our collection from these multinationals.
Thank you, RD Esmeralda Tabule. And tama po ba? RDO. Okay. Mamaya may penalty yung nagbigay nito sa akin. Okay. But anyways, welcome and congratulations to your new appointment, ma'am. Swerte ng Jensen.
Thank you.
She's very, di ba? So you have a new RDO. So hopefully, you'll have a better BIR also serving you. But I'd like to point out yung sinabi ni Sir kanina about yung, what's this, yung router. So that you know who and where is the cause of the delay. I think that's a good practice. And I'd like to share this, if I may request our colleagues here to perhaps mention this to the commissioner, to BIR commissioner or to Secretary Dominguez, if we get inputs like this, if there are best practices that that is being done in in other RDOs, for example, siguro pwede nating i-share yun sa ibang mga RDOs.
Ma'am, if I may add on that also. Actually, in my previous assignments, this practice of having that routing sleep, no, in order to pinpoint responsibility if ever there is a delay, it is being applied not just on the processing of car, but it is also being applied in the processing, particularly of clearances, especially that for importation permit, no, na application. So, in our district now, I was happy to see that it's being used for the car processing. But unfortunately, while there is already that practice now in place, still we cannot achieve the targeted 5-day processing period. But for other processes, this is also one thing we can commit now, that we will try to adapt this in the same way that it is being adapted for car processing. So for other clearances, we try our very best that this can be made more faster with this use of the routing sleep to point out delays if ever there are.
Okay. Any more questions from our audience? Okay. Time check daw. Okay. Sige. If there are no more questions, this is, I think, I just want to raise this. I've also been part of, we did these consultations also around the country before the train was passed. No? In fact, we've been doing these tax road shows for like 4 years now. No? And I know for a fact that, I'm not government pa by the way, but I know for a fact that there were a lot of compromises done in Congress when the train was passed. So this looked like a good proposal, no? The package 2. How can we be assured that at least yung mga key features of package 2 will not be compromised? Or how do we see this in Congress, ma'am? Will it be a walk in the park? Or it will be more difficult than train? So that baka, and the end also, in connection to that, we have here with us our partners. And one of the reasons why we are doing the consultation is perhaps if they see that this will be good for them, then maybe they can also help the government who's proposing it, no, to provide you with statement of support, or perhaps meet with their congressmen to give their suggestions to make a better proposal. Diba? How do we, in the end of our participants, no, nandito, paano po sila makakatulong in the process, no? Yan.
The value of all of these consultations is that we hear inputs from all the stakeholders. So we're always willing to listen. And in fact, ang value sa akin ng roadshows talaga is being able to listen to people, to the citizens, the taxpayers. No? Now, whether or not this is going to be a walk in the park, my 4 decades of experience in government and having to push reforms through Congress lean me towards saying that there's no walk in the park. In fact, the park does not exist as far as tax legislation is concerned. No? But having said that, it's also important that we are very upfront and very with Congress, tell them why we need this reform, what the objectives are, and we go to Congress armed with information, armed with statistics, armed with evidence on why we believe that this bill should actually be crafted into law. So it's not a proposed legislation which is simply based on what we wish for or what we want. It is a bill that is crafted based on hard evidence. So ito po yung pinanghahawakan namin. And we are also hopeful that our legislators will also listen to what the DOF is actually saying. Meron naman po itong imprimatur sa cabinet. So we have agreed also with our counterpart officials at the Department of Trade and Industry. Previously kasi we've always clashed when it came to the rationalization of fiscal incentives. But right now, there's an agreement and cooperation between DOF and DTI. In fact, in some forums, both the DOF and the DTI present. So, tandem po yan, and which is how and what it should be when it comes to government and good governance. No? So, ang hinihiling namin sa lahat, listen to us with an open mind. Hindi naman ho yung open-minded ka ba? Hindi ho yung ganon, but listen to us with an open mind and open heart and believe in our good intentions. No? And we can only have good intentions translate into actual actions if we have the support of the people. Yun ho ang hinihiling namin, and hoping that you can persuade also the people representing you in Congress to support this bill.
Thank you, ASEC. Kasi as of now, no, in our current system, the incentives is given freely by DTI without DOF or NEDA knowing it. No? Wala pong information. So walang nagmo-monitor how the companies are doing after giving them the incentives. So I think that's also one of the things that you wanted to address in package 2. Okay, so if there are no more questions, I'd like again to give the microphone to our speakers for their last words. Last words talaga. Parang pangit nga pakinggan. Parang mali yun, ano? Okay, do you want to give your, baka meron kayong gusto sabihin, no? Oo nga. Hindi, I don't mean it that way, no? I hope we all have a safe travel going back to Manila. Okay. Who wants to start? Mitch, sir, okay. Okay. Sir, do you want to give reaction first before we give back the mics? Okay. O, sige pa. Asan po yung microphone? Si Dr. Mr. Claudio would like to say something. Reaction.
Well, again, from the business sector, with us here is our President, Elmer Catolpos, and the regional governor for PCCI. I guess the presentation was very, very accurate, and then it's really very clear and understandable. You know, just like death, taxes is inevitable. It would really increase. For sure, with the leadership of President Duterte, as well as the moral ascendancy of his government, his governance, I can bet that this will pass. But again, in Congress, you know how it works. Marami diyang backdoor negotiation, marami diyang mga power players, mga industries, and all these things. So these are the things that must be safeguarded, must be that the people should look into. Kasi baka the intention is good, baka ma-water down lang ito. So these are the things like in Train 1. Of course, the benefit, the cost benefit, we still have to look at it for Train 1. Kasi dito, pinupost na natin ito, wala pa yung cost benefit. So kami dito, parang nasa hanging pa kami doon sa balance. Meaning, we have really to determine the impact of this vis-a-vis the common tao. Kasi ang apektado dito yung common masses eh. Ito ang mga wage earners, let us say, yung minimum wage earners, apektado. Kasi noon, talagang yan sila, tax-free na yan sila. Wala silang income tax na binabayaran. But this time, hindi tumataas ang kanilang wages, pero apektado sila doon sa inflation. So, this time, I hope that the government, although meron tayong incentive na binibigay kanila, yung 4 piece, pero napakaliit po niyan. Yearly, 400 pesos. How can that mitigate the inflationary effect doon sa kanilang wage? So yung kanilang purchasing power will diminish because of inflation. So lalo pong bibigat ang problema. So meaning, in crafting this Train 2, pati yung package 2 natin dyan, tungkol sa increasing taxes, let us look at the net effect of this to the common tao. Yun lang po.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Yeah, I think that's important. DOF, I'm sure they took note of that. But before, again, because again, this is very rare in all the road shows that a governor stays with us the whole day for 2 days. So, Gov, Solon, can we request you kasi may phone-in question po. Actually, may phone-in text po dito. Phone-in text, ang gulo. Anyway, sir, can we get your reaction before we end the program also? That's not a question, but it's a request, sir. I'm sorry for getting you so confused. A reaction, sir.
Sorry, I was
yeah,
speaking
maybe a
to-
closing remarks, perhaps, or reaction
Okay, to which
what
question?
went-
I'm sorry, which question?
Hindi po. Hindi po siya question.
Akala ko
Like,
someone
a
called
statement or a reaction for like si Mr. Claudio po kasi gave his reaction,
Okay.
no, on about the presentation and the process, no, and the forum. Baka lang po you have anything to say before we close the program.
I think this is such an excellent forum and a conference that you've held, no? Because the thing is with budget, it affects every single department, right? So it's important that we understand these new policies and these new the new information coming out. Ako personally, I really feel I've never experienced this type of administration before kay President Duterte. Now, hindi ako biased, taga Mindanao ako, hindi. Kasi nakikita ko, the actions and the results of what he's doing is unlike I've ever seen in the past. So I believe that this is really the time for the Philippines to level up. We need a lot of these things, let's say the new tax law, it might seem like a bitter pill we need to swallow, but I think we're going to be stronger and better for it. And it's not lip service, as you noticed. Look, did you ever think that the privates of the army and the PO1s of the police will get double salary? We've heard that many times before, but did you ever think it was going to happen? Raise your hand. Those who really thought it was going to happen, or akala nyo bola lang? Huh? Did you ever think that you would get the jeepneys of Manila to stop polluting the streets? Did you think it was just talk, or did you think it was going to happen? Diba? I mean, these are just little things that I see that motivate me and give me hope that the Philippines is ready to take its next step. Curb corruption. Let's give the Department of Finance the leeway to not only increase taxes but make the Philippines a better place. So I don't know if that's what you wanted, Ma'am Relly.
Sorry, sir, for I'm just doing my job, but you did really good. That's why I wanted you to speak, di ba? Because you inspire us, Gov. Thank you very
ma'am.
much.
Thank you.
So the speakers don't want to give their reaction anymore, but no, I'd like to emphasize what the governor said. No, ito yung takeaway siguro natin going home. No, there's a real chance for real change. No, with our president. No, we've seen this in the past 1 year. No, wala pang 2 years. We've seen real change, and there's a real chance for change. And change can also mean that there's a better chance for a better Philippines. So on that note po, we want to thank everybody who went here and who attended, and we hope that it was worthy of your time in behalf of all the organizers. And I'd like to thank specifically the region, DILG Region 12, no, yung partner namin for organizing this, because they really did a very good job. A round of applause for our DILG, and DBM. So maraming salamat po sa inyong lahat and maayong hapon, magandang Jensan.